with Spirit of Health. Is there anybody who's never been here? Only one? Okay. So I have been a naturopathic doctor for 15 years now, and I have said this many times, so I'm going to say it again. And having seen over 10,000 people in 15 years, the number one thing I've seen help the most human beings get better is parasite cleansing, period. And that's been true, it's still true, and I believe it will continue to be true. I was parasite cleansing people 12, 15 years ago before it was like popular and all over social media. Now it's everywhere, right? Everybody's talking about parasites and parasite cleansing and showing you crazy pictures and, you know, all the stuff. I did not bring a slideshow. You should be very thankful that I did not bring a slideshow and I'm not showing any videos. I do have folders on my computer with thousands of pictures of what has come out of humans, and it's insane. We're talking like normal, healthy, young people. So this is a monumentally huge issue. And so what do I do with my notes? Oh, I put them over here. It's like, I thought I had notes. So I have notes. I'll kind of try to go through the notes. It's interesting that I've been doing these series classes of like 3-part series, and here I'm doing a parasite cleansing, my favorite topic on the whole planet, and I'm doing one class. So we'll do more next year. How about that? But so I'll cover what I can, and I'm happy to stay late. I mean, this is a topic that, you know, you can talk about like forever. So yeah, I'll just do my best to squeeze as much in a short amount of time. But I just really want to be clear that, you know, this is an epidemic problem. I would say that it is becoming more mainstream now. But what's fascinating, I try to help people connect the dots, right? Has anybody heard about people taking ivermectin? Okay. Have you heard about people taking fenbendazole? Okay. What are they taking those things for?
Parasites.
Parasites. COVID. Cancer. That's the big one. It got popular because of COVID, and then all of a sudden people with cancer started taking it. And what's happening with people with cancer that are taking ivermectin and fenbendazole? They're getting better. So what does that tell you?
Parasite problem. Parasites.
Cancer is a parasite problem. Now, I don't believe cancer is necessarily 100% a parasite problem, but I believe it's an infectious disease issue, and I believe it can be fungus, it can be mold, it can be parasites. But that's huge. That is a huge understanding, because every one of us knows somebody who's been touched by cancer, whether it's yourself or a family member or a friend, and it's only getting worse. And the reason cancer and some of these chronic diseases are only getting worse is the parasite problem or the infectious disease problem in our world is only getting worse. And the medical system is not addressing it. In fact, they still often like even just discount the belief that people in America have parasites because that's like a third world problem, right? Absolutely not. It's not about third world. It's really, if you want to give like the biblical understanding of it, it's clean versus unclean. Okay? So I don't want to dive into that, even though it's like would be my favorite thing to talk about, because I love talking about like the biblical understanding behind the issues we're having today. But really the reality is this is our holy temple. And God makes it very clear in the Bible that, you know, He is holy, be holy because I am holy. And it's related to cleanliness. And He actually gave us a whole lot of rules, quote unquote, Old Testament, that, you know, we don't necessarily have to follow. Anyway, I don't want to get into all that, but He made it very clear that there's clean versus unclean. And so I feel like the last 100 years in our world, if you look at the food industry, if you look at the medical system, if you look at just all the man-made chemicals in our world today, our society has become very unclean. And the result of that is showing up in our bodies. And in our bodies, it's showing up in the way of parasites and other infectious diseases. So I could have done a whole lot of better explaining that, but I didn't want to dive too deep into it because it's easy for me to go on bunny trails. So let's just jump into this. I'm going to kind of go through the notes. Learning goals. Parasites are not a third world problem. They are a worldwide human population problem. I would say it's the biggest problem in America. I'd say it's the biggest reason we have chronic disease in America. I believe it's the actual root cause of why people get their label or their diagnosis. Right? Think about a diagnosis like, oh, you have cancer, you have fibromyalgia, you have chronic fatigue syndrome, you have, name the disease. Think about all the autoimmune diseases out there. And again, I'm not saying there's not other reasons people have these illnesses, but again, the biggest issue in most people is parasites. And I think it's just hard to believe. It's like hard to fathom that like we could have this parasite issue. And then we start thinking, well, gosh, I didn't have any cats or dogs, or, I didn't grow up on a farm, or, how could I possibly have parasites? Well, we're all exposed to things, whether it's through food or, unfortunately, pets is a big reason. Cats are the worst. I'm sorry for you cat lovers out there. But, we deworm our animals. How often are we deworming humans, right? All right. Understand how people get infected. Parasites are very hard to detect. I want to talk about that. Review the current U.S. burden. Evidence-based treatments. So there are medications. I'm not going to go deep into the medications just because that's not my specialty, but I will say this. Parasites are a big problem, and whatever you can do or take to get them out of your body, the better off you're going to be. And if that means taking ivermectin and fenbendazole, like who am I to say that there's something wrong with that, right? If you have a loved one that has cancer and they take ivermectin, yeah, it's a pharmaceutical drug. You guys know my stance on pharmaceutical drugs. If that's get parasites out of that person and they don't have cancer anymore, I'm like, praise God. Fair? So I am about what's going to help people, what's going to heal people, what's going to help get these infections out of people's bodies, because that's why people are suffering today. People are suffering because they have infectious disease. Now, I don't think I went into this on the notes, so let me just maybe help us understand. And I have these conversations with people every day. I sound like a broken record to myself because I say the same thing over dozens and dozens and dozens of times. But I have to say to people all the time, like, okay, I'm sorry, this is really gross, but I have to help you understand what's happening in your body so you can see the reality of it. Because the reality is we get infected by infectious disease organisms, and what do? They eat, they poop, they lay eggs and reproduce. So like this is a disgusting conversation, and sometimes I'm like, oh, thanks Lord that I get to talk about parasites with people all day, every day. But if I can help people, I'm all for it. So that's the reality. When you have an infectious disease organism in your body, and the same is true with mold or fungus or a virus like Epstein-Barr virus or Candida or any number of ones, parasites are the worst. They're the worst because they're larger organisms. Now they can be large or small. We'll get into the different types, but they're larger organisms. They can lay literally mind-blowing numbers of tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of eggs. And it's really, really hard. It's really hard to get rid of them. So let me just bust one myth right now. If anybody out there has a parasite problem and you think you're going to do one parasite cleanse and fix your parasite problem, okay, it does not work that way. And I think a lot of that is like the medical mindset, like, hey, we can just take this pill or do this one thing and we're going to like solve our problems. So I will give you some ideas of how I treat parasites, or I have over the last 15 years of doing this. I'll give you some of those ideas, and it's actually on the very last page. So if you just flip real quick, if you look at the very last page, I basically just kind of broke it down for you, and I said, hey, this is what I have learned. Actually, it's this one. Yep, that's the last one. So if anybody wants to share, so yeah, I'll let you guys work that out. So what was I saying?
Your treatment.
Yes, so the last page, I basically just broke down some of the things. There's so much, but some of the things I've learned in the last 15 years. Okay, so I think we should, hopefully we'll have some time we can go through that because I think that's key. All right, so key messages going back to the top. Parasites are under-recognized. Okay, one, because doctors don't learn about it in medical school. We still believe that it's like a third world problem or somebody else's problem. We feel like it's rare in America, and none of that is true. So even the statistics you look at, if you look at the statistics of the number of people infected by certain parasites, those are not even close to the reality. Because people are sick and they don't know why. They go to the doctor doesn't know why. The doctor's not diagnosing that person with parasites. Like how many of you know, just real quick, how many of you know somebody that went to the doctor and the doctor said, you have a parasite problem? Not one. Okay, but I'm saying as a naturopathic doctor, it's the number one thing I've seen help the most people over 15 years. So there's a problem there. There's a disconnect there, right? All right, so detection is tricky. Parasites are living organisms. They very rarely come out in the stool sample. Okay, so we have a couple of ways we can kind of get an idea if people have parasites, which I'll talk about a little bit. Consequences are real. Chronic diarrhea, seizures, heart failure. I mean, you can't even touch what parasites are doing. But again, it's because they're dumping toxins and poisons into our body all day long. It's horrible. It's gross, but it's the reality. So I mentioned this. I underlined it. I put we routinely deworm pets. But systematic human screening is uncommon outside of specific risk groups. So we're taking care of our plants and we're taking care of our animals, and we're just neglecting this reality that humans have parasite problems. Many diseases we give names today may have parasites at the root of the issues. Example, cancer, bowel diseases, MS, chronic fatigue, and dozens more. I am in a think tank group with a group of neuroscientists or other neurologists, neurological doctors, specifically that work with MS patients. Anybody here know anybody who's had MS? Okay, this is a group of doctors specifically in a group to help treat and heal MS. And their consensus right now is that MS is parasites in the brain.
Wow.
And more and more and more of this reality and these truths are what are behind people's chronic health issues and their diagnosis. More and more of it will be coming out. Okay, what we've been talking about as natural doctors for decades is slowly, finally starting to come out into the light, this reality. So how people get infected, you guys probably know this, contaminated water and food, right? Like, how many times have I heard the story in my office? Like, I went on this trip to Thailand, I got sick, and I was never the same since. I went to Philippines, I went to Mexico, I went to, like, you name it, got sick, had chronic health issues ever since. Heard that story 1,000 times in my office. Soil contact, pica, if you've heard of that, that's where people like crave eating dirt and stuff. It's really nutrient deficiencies, but obviously dogs and cats, they can have parasites in their feces. Insect vectors, kissing bugs, chagas, that's like in the news right now. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah.
There's epidemic of this kissing bug disease. That's parasites. Parasites, it's a protozoan parasite, little microscopic parasites. Sexual transmission, travel or immigration, which I mentioned. Why parasites are hard to detect. The symptoms might not seem like a big deal. You got diarrhea once in a while, you get some bloating, you get some reoccurring headaches, you just on and off get sick, seem to have a weak immune system. There's all kinds of symptoms, but it could be so many different things. So we're not suspecting parasites because it's not at the forefront of our brains, because again, it's not really recognized yet fully by the medical system that it's a big problem that people have. I will mention serology, so blood tests. There's not a lot of good ways to check parasites. So in blood work, there's a white blood cell called eosinophils. That is the main one we look at for parasites. I'll give you an example. I had a guy I just met with the other day. He's had, I wouldn't call it a seizure disorder, but he starts to get like the auras and dizziness and borderline seizure, and it just happens to him on and off every couple of months. He went to the doctor, got a scope. They diagnosed him with eosinophil esophagitis. It's EEO, something like that. I can't remember the exact name. EOE, thank you. He was diagnosed with EOE. Told me how he went on a trip, I think it was Thailand. He went on a trip overseas to Thailand and got sick, came back, started having these weird neurological issues, been on and off going to doctors for years. They don't know what it is. They're just like, hey, we'll monitor you, just let us know if it gets worse. Mentioned that they diagnosed him with EOE, and I said, eosinophils are the main marker we look at to determine if somebody has a parasite problem. I said, I think you have parasites. So I don't know yet, because that conversation just happened last week, but it's a really, really good theory, okay? So again, it's just mind-blowing, like how many people, health issues are actually from parasites, and they just don't know it. What I always say about parasites is do a parasite cleanse, because what's the worst that can happen?
You get rid of them.
No, the worst that can happen. Nothing happens, and you kind of wasted a few bucks, right? The best thing that can happen is it gets you on the path to possibly changing your life forever. So, no reason not to try a parasite cleanse. Yes.
Treatment. It's not like pharmaceutical antibiotics where you end up creating superbugs or
No.
Intolerance.
Nope, not at all. Yep, you do not create those types of intolerances or superbugs using natural treatments, which is a bonus of using herbs and natural treatments. And again, I am not against using medications for parasites because the parasites are such a big issue. I actually send people often to a farm supply store, or I tell them to get it on Amazon. And there's all kinds of things that work that are used in the treatment of animals. Now, veterinarians, actually, I would say today, this is a funny thought, just popped in my brain. I think veterinarians are more well-trained to deal with the chronic disease epidemic in America than medical doctors. There you go, I just said it. Because they understand the reality of infectious disease in an animal, right? So, and just parasites are not routinely screened for. It's not, people come in with symptoms and it's not on the doctor's brain to go, oh, I wonder if this person has parasites. Like it's not on their radar. So of course the statistics are going to be abysmally low. So common US parasites, I just list a very, very few. I list Giardia, that's a common one people get. Babesia, I see that in my office quite a bit. So there's lots of categories of parasites, and I'm going to kind of briefly go through it, but it's mainly two big categories. You have protozoa, which are little microscopic critters. And I mentioned blood and I mentioned eosinophils. Well, if the eosinophils are high, that's the body creating this specific white blood cell to kill parasites in the blood. So the point I'm trying to make is, if your eosinophils are high in your blood work, that means there's parasites in your blood. So I'm not talking about like a tapeworm in your intestines. Does that make sense? So the conclusion you can draw for that is, one, when people have high eosinophils and they have parasites, I know they have parasites in their blood. I don't know if they necessarily have intestinal parasites. In addition to that, your eosinophils might be perfect. Doesn't mean you don't have a tapeworm. Does that make sense? That's why this parasite thing is such a big deal, and it's tricky and it's mysterious and it's hard to detect. So protozoa, the small parasites, and then we have helminths. Those are worms. That's just a general term for worms. And again, those would be the ones you would see, right?
Say the word again.
Helminth.
Helmet.
Helminth. So on the next page, I list the helminths, and I just list the 3 big categories. You have nematodes. Those are your roundworms. Escherichia, probably the biggest one. Strongyloides, threadworm, I see that a lot. That's systemic throughout people's body. It can be in the liver, it can be in the brain. I mean, the parasites literally can be everywhere. Cestodes are your tapeworms. Those are the big ones that, I could show you pictures. I didn't bring pictures, but they are long and they're flat and they look clear or translucent, and it often comes off in segments when you're killing them. You usually don't see like the 6-foot one, although you can sometimes. A lot of times you see the little segments of it in your stools. But that's tapeworm, and the tapeworm eggs look like little seeds. So if you have a bowel movement and you got it looks like dozens of little tiny seeds in there and you didn't eat seeds, that can be tapeworm eggs. So those are called cestodes. And then trematodes, I don't know, I would say it might be the main big one I've seen, even more than tapeworms and a lot of the big ones, because the flukes are, I just tell people to look in their stools for anything that's about dime-sized, and it looks like a tomato skin, it looks like undigested food, it looks like a piece of corn. It's just when you see a toilet bowl full of little round dime-shaped things, that's usually flukes. And I could tell you 100 stories about parasites coming out of people's body. We don't have time, but I have seen people literally drop toilet bowls full of parasites, toilet bowls. So, and a lot of times when you're dropping that many, it's flukes. And flukes can be in the liver, the pancreas, the lungs, lung flukes. Anybody in farming who has animals knows all about this. And they know how to treat it. So, all right. In the US, the most common intestinal parasites are pinworms, giardia, crypto, and occasionally tapeworms. This is the estimates. I won't go through that. It's not even close. But there's some statistics on there and the sources of those statistics. Bottom line, next page, intestinal parasites are not as rare in the US as commonly thought. Surveillance is inconsistent and outdated and underreported. Protozoan infections like giardia and crypto are more prevalent than many assume. Targeted studies in impoverished or underserved communities reveal much higher infections rates. So again, as I mentioned in the beginning, clean versus unclean.
Yeah.
So that's why we think this is a third world problem. Well, even in America, with all that we have to maintain cleanliness, we've somehow developed enough uncleanliness that we're having an epidemic of parasite problems in our body. But the reality is, if you are in a place, say like a third world country, where they don't have the proper sewage and sanitation and those types of modern, whatever you want to call them, there's going to be a bigger parasite problem, right? With anything that's unclean. So diagnosis. History clues. So when I'm sitting down with someone, I'm trying to get a very comprehensive understanding of their past. And as they kind of tell me their storyline, I'm like, make sure and mention any major event that happened. Again, like somebody traveled overseas and they got sick. With my daughter, she ate lettuce from Chipotle when they had the listeria breakout. There she is right there, Noelle. And there was issues there for years that we've had to work through with our daughter, and even knowing all that we know. And she's amazing right now. She's hiding. I probably mentioned her name. I'm sorry, honey. So, but it's just, I can tell stories personally. I can tell stories about family. I can tell stories about our staff. We've had staff members pull parasites out of their nose. Okay, I had a gal I was working with who was at a board meeting, and she felt like she had food stuck in her teeth. And she went to the bathroom, and she's pulling parasites out of her gums. Now, it's kind of my fault, because I had put her on a protocol using a navage to actually clear parasites out of her head, because she was having seizures, and she was having Bell's palsy, where half of her face was paralyzed, which can be a viral issue like Epstein-Barr virus or parasites.
So after the treatment is when they came out of her gums?
Well, it's just been an ongoing treatment. And she's been, getting parasites out of all kinds of crazy places. Parasites can come out of people's eyes. In the ion detox foot bath, people have had parasites come out of their feet. Okay, so parasites can be anywhere. All right, so tests. Okay, so the history clues is travel, sushi. Sorry if you love sushi. My wife grew up in Hawaii. She ate lots of sushi. You're gonna have parasites. There's just really no way around it. You're gonna be consuming them. So, undercooked pork, freshwater fish, untreated water, farm animal exposure, people who grew up on farms. Again, cats are really notoriously bad for parasites. I'm sorry. Tick bites. You actually can get parasites through the ticks, not just Lyme, which is a bacteria, but you can actually pick up parasites transmitted through a tick. What's that?
Even if you have the tick out.
Yes, even if you get the tick out. Yep. Tests. So there's not a lot. These are just the ones I use. The first one's the stool test. It's called a gut zoomer. It may or may not show positive, because it actually has a whole list of parasites that it could detect. But remember, parasites are living organisms. They very rarely come out of the stool alive, so they don't show up in a stool test. You have to usually kill them and help them get out. So they just don't show up in the stools a lot. So there is a marker on there, though, called eosinophil protein X. And the reason I like this marker is because just like blood, where you see eosinophils in the blood, that means you have parasites in the blood. If you have abnormal eosinophil activity in your bowels, this eosinophil protein X, high likelihood that there's actually parasites in the bowels. So it is another way for me to get an idea. The second one, the blood work, I mentioned eosinophils and basophils. And I had mentioned the guy I met with last week who went to Thailand, was diagnosed with the EOE, esophageal eosinophil issue. And he had told me, well, I had high eosinophils on my blood work, and the doctors told me I had allergies. So if the doctor had any understanding that eosinophils is parasites, and people have food allergies because they have parasites, then, maybe he could have got help a long, long time ago. I don't know if that just triggered anything for anybody. But food allergies are a sign of infectious disease, usually parasites. The one I've seen clinically is dairy. If you're allergic to dairy, the more allergic to dairy you are, the more likelihood there's a parasite problem. I've just seen it over and over and over again. So just FYI, yes.
Gluten tolerance.
Not necessarily. Gluten's kind of a whole different issue. So I wouldn't say just because you have a gluten allergy, you have parasites. Dairy seems to be the big one. I guess I would just say if you have lots of food allergies, lots of food sensitivities, definitely a parasite issue. If it's just gluten, it could be something different. So, and then the pulse test. Okay, everybody do this. Okay, so that's a joke, kind of. But it's basically like that's the joke in the natural health industry. Like, if you still have a pulse, you'll have parasites, right? It's just, people have parasite issues. It's just, it doesn't mean it's causing health issues or, obviously your immune system and your lifestyle, it might not be manifesting into some major issue, but just know that from minor symptoms up to the worst labeled chronic disease can absolutely be parasites. So, antiparasitic drugs. So I list them just to help you out, all right? The reason I list them here is because not all medications work for all types of parasites. So let's say somebody has cancer. They take ivermectin, they get better. Their buddy has cancer, takes ivermectin, doesn't help them. You might just have a different kind of parasite that ivermectin doesn't treat. So I kind of give you the list here. I tell you what the medication actually does, which is really fascinating, by basically disrupting their nervous systems of the parasite. And it treats, and you can see what it targets, the different types of parasites that they target. So ivermectin and fenbendazole are the big ones right now, just because they're kind of, I guess since COVID, they kind of got popular. Albendazole, mebendazole, praziquantel. Praziquantel, I've taken this myself. I've recommended it to other people. Anybody can go buy it on Amazon. You know what it's used for? To clean your fish pond. If you want to keep your goldfish alive, don't let them get consumed by parasites. So praziquantel works really good for tapeworms and flukes. And some of these parasites are really, really hard to clear out of the body, and it takes time. So that's why I said I'm not against, and this kind of maybe sounds weird, me even saying this. I don't know, because I'm so against the system for the most part, except for the emergency care, which I've talked about many times. I think we have the best emergency care in the world. I think we have the worst chronic illness care in the entire world. So again, I'm for what works. Let's just say it that way. I'm for what works. Pyrantel pamoate. I've recommended this to parents whose children have pinworms. How do you know you have pinworms? They're coming out of your anus.
Oh.
And I'm pretty sure somebody here, themselves or one of their children, has had pinworms. Again, it's a pretty common issue. And so I will actually have people just hop on Amazon and buy some Pyrantel pamoate and follow the instructions, because the instructions are on there by weight for the animal. So you can just use those instructions by weight and you can treat pinworms. They say it also works for roundworms and hookworms, but I've always used it for pinworms. And then hydroxychloroquine. Actually, that was another one that was kind of a big deal around COVID. Do you remember all the talk about hydroxychloroquine and all the flack like Donald Trump and other people got for actually mentioning that this could be a viable treatment for COVID? Pretty fascinating that hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, fenbendazole were helping people with COVID and now helping people with cancer, when all of these medications are anti-parasite. Again, the light bulb should be going off. Either we're clueless or they've been hiding something from us, right? So, herbs.
Vaughn, on the,
Yes.
ivermectin, it says it binds the chloride channel. So how does it do that to the parasite but not a human?
So what I would say to that is every pharmaceutical drug has a list of side effects. And so that is the risk of taking a pharmaceutical drug. If you take herbs like black walnut, it's not going to do something like that. But that's why I said it's like medications, you have to use cautiously. For the most part, I'm always trying to help people get off of medications. But if you're taking something one time, or just for a series of a week or 2 weeks, whatever you decide. And I don't usually give people those protocols. I educate them on the possibility of using them if you want. Let's just say it that way. It's going to have some of that action on the human body, which isn't great. It's going to be a side effect, but we're pretty big and we're pretty strong compared to those little parasites. So it's going to kill those parasites real quick, not overly going to damage the human. But so the answer is, yeah, it's going to have a similar effect on the human body. That's why all pharmaceutical drugs have a list of side effects. Fair? All right. Herbs. Was there one more question?
Yeah, regarding the hydroxychloroquine, if you have, if you break out in hives, is that a result of a detox?
Yes.
Parasite?
Yes. Yeah, very common for people with parasites to break out in hives. I've had people just do our regular old parasite cleanses, and they start doing the parasite cleanse, and bam, they're breaking out in hives. So that histamine response can be common with parasites. All right, herbs. So I just list some. There's just too much to get into. So yeah, you can look at that. There's so many things you can use, and herbs are very, very, very powerful. They really work. Herbs work to get rid of parasites without the side effects of medication. So again, you have to decide, how you want to treat, your parasite issues. But the big three, I would say, are black walnut, wormwood, and cloves. Those are the big three, well known for centuries of helping people clear parasites out of their body. Garlic's pretty crazy strong. I've recommended people do garlic enemas. I've seen people pass toilet bowls full of worms, putting garlic in the other side.
You just chop up the garlic?
So the way you do a garlic enema real quick is you take 3 or 4 cloves of fresh garlic, press it through a garlic press, and put it into a little bit of water on the stove. Bring it to a boil and just boil it like 2-3 minutes. And then you're going to strain it into your enema bucket with about 1 quart of water. So you're basically putting a concentrated fresh garlic water in your enema bucket. And then you insert that and, we'll see what happens. All right, so oregano, golden seal, other non-herbal treatments. So I mentioned here chlorine dioxide and turpentine. So if I have the turpentine here, it's not the paint thinner that you go buy at the hardware store, just so you know, in case any of you are like, oh my gosh, this guy's insane. He's talking about turpentine. Turpentine is actually 100% pure gum spirits from a pine tree. It's 100% naturally distilled out of a pine tree. There's no chemicals in it. So that was an old school remedy. People back in the day when they lived on farms and they treated themselves and they didn't have a doctor right around the corner, and it could in fact take days to get to a doctor, they would use castor oil, turpentine, and alcohol. Right? Does anybody know about this? Anybody heard these stories? You know about this? You did it. Come on. So this is something that was very, very normal just 100 years ago and has fallen out of popularity. But, we have to find ways. Let me just say it this way. We have to find ways to treat ourselves and our children of these issues, because I don't think anybody's going to be able to skate around it. Like it is a part of our world today. It's part of the battle that we're in. So we got about 15 minutes. I'm going to save questions for the end, okay, just so I can make sure I get through this. These are more what you could call like unconventional treatments. You know what I didn't put on here? H2O2, hydrogen peroxide. Okay, story. I got so many stories, but I got to tell you a couple stories. One story. I had a gal who was really, really, really sick. Like thought she was going to die sick. She was actually suicidal because she didn't want to live anymore because she felt so horrible. And she was pregnant. And we knew she was sick, and we did a parasite cleanse, and nothing came out. And we both knew she had parasites. And I said, well, if you want to try it, and of course, you know, she's desperate. She's going to try anything. I said, if you want to try it, take a teaspoon of food grade hydrogen peroxide. So H2O2, hydrogen peroxide, a teaspoon of it, put it in a quart of water. So it's extremely diluted, right? A teaspoon in a quart enema bucket and do an enema. She passed basically the equivalent of like 3 to 4 full toilet bowls full of worms. And I'm talking long, white worms. And they just kept coming and coming. So basically that hydrogen peroxide opened up the floodgates to drop all those parasites out of her body. And the cool thing is she, you know, she got better. Not obviously, like, you don't solve everything just because, you know, you do one thing and get some parasites out. But she got significantly better, had a baby. I didn't ever talk to her again. And it was a couple months ago. It was like 2-3 months ago. I ran into some gal like at a restaurant somewhere randomly. She's like, are you Vaughn, Spirit of Health? And she goes, I'm so-and-so's sister. And she goes, I just want you to know that our whole family believes that you saved her life. And I was like, because I didn't hear from her again. And so just cool stories, you guys, cool stories. But again, just giving you guys the reality of like how real this is. So chlorine dioxide, man, I don't have time to tell you the story on it, but controversial. Don't look it up on the internet because they're going to say it's poison. Because they totally don't even understand what it is, or more so it's really kind of the cover-up of it. Now, these things are strong. You have to be cautious. You have to be careful. You got to know what you're doing. You got to go slow. This isn't something to just go crazy with. But chlorine dioxide, I'll just tell you the quick story. It's a water purifier. So you would take it with you hiking or camping. You know, you're out in the middle of nowhere and you don't have water, and you get water from the stream and you add the chlorine dioxide in it, and it kills all the, you know, bacteria or whatever parasites in the water so that you can drink the water. That's what it was for. Well, the story goes, and you can look it up, the guy's name's Jim Humble. He was in Africa, he was with a couple buddies. They were in the middle of the jungles of Africa and they got malaria. And you know the story?
Yeah.
Okay. Was it South America?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Colombia.
Correction, they were in South America. And they got malaria. They thought they were going to die because, you know, malaria can take you out pretty quick, especially if you don't get any kind of treatment. And so all he had was this water disinfectant. And so he was high dosing it. He put, I don't know, 30 drops, or I don't know what this story, but he put a very high amount in it. They all drank it. They all were vomiting and had diarrhea. And within 24 hours, they completely cleared the malaria. Okay. So the crazy story is they shared it with the African government of some of these countries in Africa. I don't know if they did it in South America, but I know they did it in Africa. And they were working with the Red Cross, and they were actually treating people for malaria and curing them with chlorine dioxide. But it was taking so much money out of the pockets of the GDP, like the gross domestic product of the country, because of all the revenue they got from pharmaceutical companies for treating malaria. The presidents of those countries just basically shut down the whole operation. So it's, you know, it's not profitable to cure people, right? Like we all know that, but that's one of many stories like that, where they found a cure that was super cheap, that was working. And because it interfered with the interests of all the people who have their hands in the money pots, they nixed the whole project. So, and you can look it up. If you look up the story, they'll tell you how it was all a lie and it was poison, and this so-and-so guy got arrested for doing this. And it's, you know, he's the, what do you call it? He's the scapegoat, right? Anytime you're trying to cover something up, you got to blame somebody, have a scapegoat. And anyway, it's pretty interesting because I've looked it up. I'm just curious, like, what does ChatGTP have to say about this? Anyway, all right, enzymes and supportive agents. Serapeptase, actually. I've been using proteolytic enzymes more. I'm a big fan of them, but they break down what are called biofilms, if you haven't heard that term. But biofilms, these infectious disease organisms encase themselves in like a protective coating, which is why often they become like antibiotic resistant and things like that. I have seen, yes, it's gross. I've literally seen nests come out of people. It literally has like a hard casing on it because parasite nests can grow in people's body. A lot of cysts and tumors are actually just enclosed parasites. And again, that stuff you can look up. There's all kinds of examples where a gal went into the hospital and she had this big tumor and the surgeon cut into it and it was just parasites. All those stories are out there, guys. And in America, not in third world countries. I don't need to go through the prevention checklist, but you know, trying to keep your hands out of your mouth, hand hygiene, drinking clean water, cooking your food thoroughly, you know, pet waste. Be really careful if you're pregnant, especially if you have cats, and not touching anything related to the cat or kitty litter. Like, that's a big deal, I believe. Ticks are a problem. Okay, so let's go through my sheet. Sweet, we got a few minutes. This is just like some of the things I've learned over the years, just to help you guys out to get started. All right? Everyone has parasites. Some have a bigger problem than others. So don't freak out, but to some extent, we all have some level of a parasite issue, but we have an immune system, and it doesn't mean you're having a problem just because you have parasites. But if you have a health issue and you don't know what it is, or you've been ill for a long time and nobody's found any solutions, or you know somebody who actually has a diagnosis of something serious like cancer, then absolutely we should be doing parasite cleanses. I do them on my children, right, children? We do parasite cleanses. Ooh, my son's not here, but I'm gonna tell you a story about my son. He has had gut issues, but one thing he would have is he would be scared at night to go to bed because he said he would have bad dreams and he would have nightmares. And of course, I believe him. You know, I believe that he was having bad dreams. And so I was like, you know what? Let's do a parasite cleanse. And the first night, I gave him a bunch of parasite stuff, whatever, clove, wormwood, some of the stuff I do. Mixed it up, gave it to him. The next day, he goes, hey, Dad, I didn't have any nightmares last night.
Wow.
And still, what does Nathan ask for before bed? Can I have my parasite drink? So obviously he was telling the truth, right? And he was having bad dreams. So here's the crazy thing about parasites. Oh. Wow. Sorry. I've just seen a lot of things, guys. It's not okay. I'm just thinking of the scripture, the enemy comes to, you know, steal, kill, and destroy. And he's stealing people's lives and our kids. And people are suffering. And there's answers out there. And what's hard about it is when we have parasites, we're not who we really are. We're not who God created us to be. Our brains aren't working the way God intended them to work. Do you know how many times people have parasite issues and they're doing things that they normally would never do? Do you know how many people are in quote unquote in institutions, insane asylums that are full of parasites and nobody's helping them and they've just been written off as crazy? Like, how sad is our world right now without this understanding? I've just seen so many, like, it's sad, all the stuff I've seen, but it's also amazing, the stories I've seen. I mean, I've had people like, Yeah, let's just say, man, I work really, really hard, just like not to judge people. Because you get somebody that comes in and they're mean and angry and irritable and you can't do anything right. And it's like, if you stick it out with them and they do a parasite cleanse, all of a sudden it's like, who are you? Like, it ain't the same person, guys. Like, if you study parasitology and what parasites do to the body, do to the blood, do to the brain, it'll blow your mind. So a lot of the things we're doing and our actions and our thoughts aren't really us.
I just said one thing.
Sure.
In Judaism, they call like the demons, like what we call them Christian. They call that klipa, which is a parasite.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually some kind of thing that sucks life out of you.
Yes.
And takes it for themselves.
Yes. So parasite is a Greek word. Does anybody know what it means? To dine at another's table.
Oh no.
We're the host.
We're the host.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, not to get all spiritual on you guys, but it's spiritual. Okay, the first sin, right? And Satan came as a serpent, or I'd call him a worm, right?
Yeah.
And that would be being kind to Satan, to call him a worm. So, all right. Sorry, I got a little bunny trail there, but that was fun. All right, so let's see. Everyone has parasites. Some have bigger problems than others. For any health concern or diagnosis, treat parasites. Worst case scenario, nothing major happens. Move on. I had one of those today. I had a guy do a parasite cleanse. I'm like, hey, 3 out of 4 people have a parasite issue. Let's try. He has deep fungal issues, deep yellow coating on his nails. Like, I know he's got a major fungal issue, but I'm like, let's do parasites. Because if you have a parasite issue, you have to deal with that first. Well, praise God. No parasites came out. He didn't feel any different. His mood, nothing changed. Okay, let's move on. We'll work on the fungus. But I always tell people, if you're going to do a parasite cleanse, look in your stools for anything abnormal. Don't be like, oh, I think that's just undigested food because I ate so-and-so last night. Probably not. So check your stools, and then any changes in mood or behavior, good or bad. Good or bad. So if you do it and you're like, man, I'm happier and I feel lighter and I feel like joy, that's great. But if you do a parasite cleanse and you're angry and you're irritable and everybody's driving you crazy, it's the parasites. So that's why I'm like, just pay attention to any symptoms, good or bad, when you do a parasite cleanse. See this a lot with kids. And I see it go both ways. I see the parents give the kids a parasite cleanse and they're better, they're happier. And then I see sometimes the polar opposite, where they're flipping out, okay? But it's the parasites. Always treat intestinal parasites first, then treat blood or protozoan parasites, or the microscopic ones. The reason is big parasites are going to have more toxins in them and they're going to be more of a host. So for example, in the treatment of Lyme disease, we have learned to treat parasites first. If you have Lyme disease and you don't treat parasites, your risk is you treat your Lyme disease and you get better. And then because you have parasites, and parasites are a host organism to bacteria, including Lyme, they reinfect you. So you always, always, always treat parasites first, no matter what your issue is. And if you can confirm and rule out that you don't have a parasite issue, praise God, go work on other things. But if you do have a parasite issue, I think I talk about this. One parasite cleanse is never enough. General rule of thumb, so if you're actually having intestinal parasites, you want to do it until you see nothing in your stools. And even after that, you want to do what's called a full moon protocol, which we provide to people, where you do a parasite cleanse just 5 days, once a month, around the full moon, because yes, parasites are more active around the full moon, and people get better results. I've heard it hundreds of times. So parasite cleanse every day until your stools look normal, then still continue for 5 days once a month because of, again, the life cycle of parasites, the eggs, all that kind of thing. I learned this the hard way, guys. I've worked with people and it's like, oh my gosh, you're better, hallelujah, see you later. And all of a sudden, 6 months later, he calls me back, he's like, all my symptoms came back. Well, you know what? My fault. I didn't stay diligent with working on the parasite issue with you. And so I've learned that, and I'm not gonna miss that with people anymore. It's a big deal. Strongly encouraged to do enemas when parasite cleansing. You can try coffee. You can add parasite herbs. So black walnut, wormwood, a good parasite blend, like I got the Clarkia 100. I mentioned a little teaspoon of food grade hydrogen peroxide. The things I talk about are controversial. They are, but I just want people to get better. But you still got to be smart, be safe, go slow. I got to say all those things, but sometimes we have to do unconventional things to get better, because I would say for the most part, our medical conventional treatments aren't really doing the job right now. Not well enough anyway.
Would you add a little bit of oregano or coffee?
I would not do oregano. It's way too strong. It would burn.
So hydrogen peroxide.
Hydrogen peroxide, but again, start with a teaspoon, a very, very small amount. Garlic enemas, amazing for purging parasites, especially tapeworms. Okay, tapeworms do not like garlic and they do not like oxygen. Spirit of Health can teach you how to do these types of enemas. So we have all kinds of documents on how to do enemas. 444, liver gallbladder flushes. A lot of parasites, especially flukes, liver flukes, live in the liver. So you want to do the gallbladder flush. I have lots of information on gallbladder flushing too. That's where you do like the lemon juice with olive oil and like Epsom salt drinks. It's like drinking out of a rubber hose. It's nasty, but it works. And I've learned to have people add the parasite herbs to the olive oil lemon juice mixture to get the parasites in their liver. And same thing. It is crazy how people drop liver flukes out of their stools. So for long-term removal of parasites from the body to prevent reinfection, cleanse and purge the colon, liver, lymphatic system. So the reason people don't get well long-term is they just do one parasite cleanse, and they feel better and they're done. So long-term, again, I've mentioned clean, unclean. Our liver's got to get cleaned out. Our lymphatic system, which is the sewage system of the body, has to get cleaned out. The colon has to get cleaned out. So that's why it's not about one cleanse, guys. The only way you're going to solve the parasite issue is a complete change of your lifestyle. It just is. Like, we have to change our diet. We have to move our bodies. We have to start taking these herbs, and it would just get better and better over months. It's just going to take time. There's no magic pill. Yes?
Did you do the lymph cleanse before you do the colon and all the other ones?
No. So on cleansing, I always recommend a colon cleanse combined with a parasite cleanse first. It's just, you're dealing with the biggest two issues people have right out of the gate: bowel issues and toxins in their colon and parasites. And then liver support, and I can't probably get into the whole cleansing process right now. I've done classes on that before, but there is an order to cleansing, but the way you want to start is definitely colon. That's where it's all coming out, right? It's all got to come out through the bowels. So you got a history of constipation, you better be doing some major bowel work for a while and getting all that old waste that's stuck up in there out. So colon cleansing with parasite cleansing. And then usually I just support the liver, maybe do some of the liver gallbladder flushes. Again, you can work all that stuff in there. It's also why, it can be good to work with a practitioner who can help you understand all these things. Let me finish this and we'll do questions at the end. We're almost done. Cleansing recommendations. So for adults, I have the 3-part para-cleanse. It's kind of the beginner parasite cleanse. Start here. After that, move on to the Cellcore Advanced Parasite Cleanse, which we have a little kit for, and I have instructions here if anybody's interested. If you do this one and don't see any results or feel anything, I still encourage people to do this one. So ever since I started using Cellcore, it definitely transformed how much better results I started getting with people. So if you do this one and you do this one and you see nothing, you feel nothing, nothing changed, well then maybe, hallelujah, praise God, you don't have an intestinal parasite issue. Doesn't mean you don't have like a microscopic like blood parasite issue, but it's possible. It's possible you might not have a major parasite issue. Because again, just because you have parasites doesn't mean your immune system isn't handling it, right? That's what ultimately our immune system should be able to handle these issues, all right? And then for children, there's a children's parasite cleanse, and then there's an advanced children's parasite cleanse. Now, this is just kind of for everybody. I work with people personally, so I actually write out protocols for people. I do a magnet treatment therapy on people to help activate their immune system to clear parasites. I do Rife. We have a Rife machine that can work against parasites. I will sometimes recommend castor oil, turpentine, and some of those treatments, but that's just me working with people one-on-one. You'd have to just do a lot of research if you're gonna like use turpentine. Do a lot of research because you want to go slow and be really careful with it, but it can be one of the most effective things out there for it. So I mentioned the CBT, that's the magnet therapy I do. I've seen a lot of great results with that. You probably want to work with a practitioner if you have a complex case or a chronic illness. There are many layers to parasite cleansing. The above mentioned cleanses are beginner level cleanses, yet extremely effective. Big deal, your bowels must be moving 2 to 3 times a day if you're going to be parasite cleansing. That's huge. Last thing you want to do is kill a bunch of parasites and the waste can't get out. That's called a Herxheimer's response, if you've heard that term. People try to cleanse and they break out in hives, that was mentioned. They start getting rashes, they have cold flu symptoms. Okay, that might not necessarily be bad, but that's toxins being released into the blood. All those symptoms are from toxins in the blood. And the life of all flesh is in the blood. Leviticus 17:14. Okay, so we're trying to cleanse our body and our organs. It's going to dump stuff into the blood. It better be getting out through the bowels, urine, sweating. You know, you've got to be detoxing these things out, or you're going to have negative symptoms you don't like. Okay? And then supporting your liver, gallbladder, bowels, kidneys, lymphatic system to cleanse parasites effectively. The end.
I just
Yes, sir.
how you think the X39 patch might help with the parasites?
I don't know. X39 is for stem cells, which is great. My understanding of stem cells is the body's going to produce stem cells and create new cells for what it needs. If it needs to repair something or heal something or build something. So I personally wouldn't feel overconfident in using X39 and stem cells for parasite treatment. Logically, it doesn't make sense to me as what I would use. However, if we have a really weak immune system and we need to strengthen our immune system, then of course you could use the X39 to strengthen your immune system. I have some peptides for that now too that are amazing that for immune system function. So I would use it more for immune function, not necessarily like clearing parasites.
I've been using it for a couple of weeks and it helps me a lot.
Yeah, no, I've heard great things from the X39, absolutely. Yes, back there.
So I hear you say, take it slow. In regards to herbs,
Yes.
like, the propensity could be like, oh, I'll take teas every day, all day. What can be combined and how often would you recommend the herbal part of things?
I mean, what I would say is that's why we created parasite cleanses. Just to walk you through it. Because if you do one of our parasite cleanses, you'll see it'll say day 1, do this, 2, 3, 4, and it's titrating up. Or week 1, do this, week 2, do this, week 3. So that's why we kind of created cleanses just to help people walk through that. If you're going to do it on your own and you're like, oh, I'm going to take Clarkia 100 because it's a good parasite formula, which it is, by the way. It's black walnut, wormwood, clove, the big 3, quassia, which actually works very good, and it has hydrogen peroxide, very smart. So this is just a really good parasite formula. So I would start, if you've never done a parasite cleanse, I would put like 5 drops in water and drink it, just to make sure something crazy doesn't happen. If you do good with it, go 20 drops and just, slowly increase it. And then you can start doing dropper fulls, full dropper fulls. So I'd say just slowly work your way up. But I will never forget, I had a gal, it happens sometimes. That's why you gotta be cautious. I had a gal, I put on a parasite cleanse. The first day, taking 1 capsule of a parasite formula, her entire face broke out in horrible acne.
Can you tell us
The first day.
the name of that product again?
This one?
Yeah.
This is called Clarkia 100.
Is it Kia? Is it Dr. Bob? Is it Fulton Clark?
It's Barlow herbs,
Okay.
but it's based off of some of her work. Let's just say that. Yeah.
Good.
So, other questions? Yes.
You mentioned toxins being released when the parasites die off. So
Right.
I always heard that you need to take binders,
Yes.
psyllium husk, benzoyl clay, chlorella. Is that
Totally.
okay?
Absolutely. Yep.
Have
So like in the advanced parasite kit, the biotoxin binder is part of it. So there's a binder in there. Okay. I will tell you my favorite binder is newer, and I'm switching everybody to it because it's been so effective. It's called Binder Plus by Nutramedics. So it actually has clay, charcoal, zeolite, pectin, all the best binders in one formula. It's got aloe, glucomannan. It's just a really, really good formula. It specifically is really good for binding fungus and mold, but it also will bind parasite toxins. The thing Dr. Hulda Clark used that we sell, I give it to people if they're having trouble sleeping at night, but it's called ornithine, L-ornithine. That actually mops up the ammonia. So parasites, one of the toxins parasites dump into the body is ammonia. And so L-ornithine can help mop up the ammonia. I'll give that to people at night before bed if they're not sleeping through the night while doing a parasite cleanse, because a lot of times that ammonia dump at night, people can't sleep. So the ornithine specifically for that, but the Binder Plus is really good. So that's what I've been giving people on a parasite cleanse. But like I said, if you do this one specifically, it includes the biotoxin binder in it. So.
Is that better than Cellcore? The carboxy?
Okay, so biotoxin binder is for, it's more of a full spectrum binder that works for like fungus, mold, parasites. Carboxy is like 10 times stronger, and it includes one specific ingredient that specifically binds mold.
That's what I'm taking.
So I give carboxy to the people I know have really high fungus, like black mold or aspergillus or really high fungal mold levels. I'll do the carboxy. But I'll usually start them on the biotoxin binder, make sure they do that pretty good for a couple bottles, then do the carboxy, because the same thing, the carboxy is so strong, it can cause unwanted side effects. So, yes.
Is there any contraindication or downside to taking neem every day?
No, I would not take it every day long term. I would cycle it and I would take breaks. Any of those really strong things you want to take, oregano, really, really strong medicinal things, including neem, I would take it for a while and then take a break for at least a couple of weeks and just cycle it, give your body a rest. We probably should do online, right? I'm sure there's online questions. How many people we got online?
A lot.
No, how many people are showing online?
62.
62, nice. All right, yeah, what do we got? Let's do a couple online.
So, quick question, what's the brand of the binder plus that you recommend?
Nutramedics. It's on our website. Yep, if you go to our store, Nutramedics, Binder Plus, phenomenal binder. If anybody has to leave, go ahead and cruise. I totally love doing this, and I literally stay and answer your questions as long as y'all want. All right, so go ahead.
Someone's asking about the safety of a parasite cleanse in the context of someone that has like colitis or an autoimmune disease.
Great question. So the safety of parasite cleansing with an autoimmune disease or colitis, I would say this. your colitis and your autoimmune disease is probably from parasites. So the best thing you can do is to do a parasite cleanse. Now, having given parasite cleanses to literally thousands of people, it's very unlikely that just because you have an autoimmune condition, you're going to have some bad response. Now, there are people who are super sensitive and they break out and they have, debilitating headaches or, whatever, nausea, whatever it is that, so we have to work around that. And there's things you can take and do to minimize those effects. It might be, hey, they need to do a colon cleanse first and get a bunch of junk out of their bowels. Or I have a formula called Histamine and Immune by Heart and Soil. And man, since I found that, I love that thing because it stops those histamine responses. So if anybody has food allergies that are really bad or autoimmune conditions or they're just really reactive to everything, that Histamine and Immune is like a lifesaver. So I would say jump into a parasite cleanse, try it. If you have a negative response, then you need to reach out to somebody. Call our store, I don't know. But you need to work out with somebody with what you can do to work around that, which is what I do. Like, I'm like, okay, does this person need a colon cleanse? Do they need histamine and immune? Do they need binder? They need to start with a binder because there's so many toxins built up. So I have to help people work through those issues. Let's do one more online.
This person is asking about maybe some clarification on like the difference between like parasites that might be a part of like a healthy microbiome and like parasites that are like bad for you.
Yeah, so that comes up a lot. The question is distinguishing between parasites that are a normal part of the human microbiome and parasites that are not. I'm going to be honest and say I haven't studied and I'm not aware of the parasites that are good or normal to the human microbiome. What I am aware of is there's a whole lot of parasites that are destroying humanity right now. So I'm not overly concerned about like, oh, how do we balance the good parasites in our body? I guess I would just say you have an immune system and your immune system should be able to keep things in check if it's functioning properly. And they could clarify if they want. I don't really know the purpose of the question because like, are we scared that we're gonna like kill our good parasites? I don't know. I'm not there, right? I'm seeing people sick from parasites and they need to get out of their body. And I've never had somebody think that like they were killing their good parasites or something. So I guess I would just need some clarification or understanding what they mean by the question. But I haven't even really dove into that because I don't know how necessary it is to understand that personally. I mean, somebody could totally prove me wrong, but.
It's not like an antibiotic.
Right.
In light of the question, the online one of, what if someone's taking medications and they're kind of nervous, will this interfere with medications? Things
So like any medication, not necessarily parasite medications. Yeah, if somebody's taking medications and they're worried about interference, a binder 100% is going to interfere with your medication. Okay? Medications, although they might work, they are toxins to the body. The binder will bind them because that's what binders do. So that's a biggie. As far as a parasite cleanse itself, and this is just a very generic rule of thumb, 90 minutes to 2 hours. If you're taking pharmaceutical drugs and you're taking supplements and natural things, give yourself a 90 to 120 minute window. If you don't want to take any chances of any interference or contraindications or things like that. So
That be before and
before or after.
after.
Yep, before or after. That's a general rule of thumb if you're on medications. Anybody else? More online?
Can you address possible protocols for babies and children for parasites?
Sure. So can you address parasite cleansing for babies and children? So children, this children's parasite, oh, this isn't the children's one. I have a children's parasite cleanse out there. I've started that with kids as young as 18 months because they were my kids. And I have had other parents do the children's parasite cleanse with kids that are 18 months to 2 years plus. So I'd say our children's parasite cleanse is great for littles. Babies, I don't know. Babies, what I would say if they're infants, silver, although silver's not necessarily parasites, but silver does work great for candida, yeast, fungus, mold, all viral issues. So I've given silver to babies a lot. Maybe what you could try with babies is homeopathics. I have not studied homeopathy in depth, but I know it works and it's very effective, but you'd have to find somebody who really understands and knows what they're doing. Or you could just look up like what's a good homeopathic for, parasites. And so those things are safe. Homeopathics are safe for babies, pregnant women. I won't get into what they are, but that's what I'd probably try with infants. But I really haven't had a parent be like, oh, my child's 6 months old and I know he has parasites and how do I do a parasite cleanse? I haven't ran across that situation yet. So.
Someone said that after 2 rounds of doing a parasite cleanser with Cellcore, they still had parasites.
Yes.
What would you recommend as the next step?
Yes, so they've done 2 rounds of Cellcore. They still have parasites. So you continue the Cellcore parasite cleanse every day until you don't see anything anymore. I'd say the longest I've seen is 3 months. I had a gal every day have parasites come out for 3 months who was in her early 20s, a young little blonde girl you'd never think in a million years had parasites. And it changed her life so much that she actually went to school to become a natural health care practitioner. And I still talk to her today. So you do it every day until you don't see anything anymore. You'll get there. And then when you do, you want to get the full moon protocol. If you don't have it, email, call Spirit of Health and say, send me the full moon protocol. We'll send you the full moon protocol and then continue once a month for 5 days, as close as you can around that full moon. Still do a parasite cleanse every 5 days, once a month for at least the next 6 months. That would be my recommendation. Sir.
You mentioned, the binders. Is that in here under a different name, or is that just another category? Or it's like new information. So
Yeah, I don't think I list the binders in here, so I don't have that information in here.
So how do binders fit into?
Okay, so parasites have waste. So if you kill a parasite or an infection, the binder's meant to absorb some of those toxins, basically, is the concept. I will say, I mentioned I've been doing parasite cleansing with people for 15 years before it was like popular and mainstream, and I never had people use a binder, and they did fine. So other naturopaths up there might string me up for saying that. I don't know. So I'm not saying, binders help. There's no doubt about it. I give people binders today. But I also will just say I did do parasite cleansing with people for 10 plus years and didn't even really use a binder, and they all did fine. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it was being discussed. We were discussing it. Somebody asked about it.
Yeah, so basically clay and charcoal and all these things, they're going to clean up waste from these infectious disease organisms. Yes?
How often do you recommend doing a parasite cleanse?
Okay, great question. So how often do you recommend doing a parasite cleanse? I would say twice a year would be a great, spring, fall would be a great twice a year way to do a parasite cleanse. Yep, if you're like, I'm generally pretty healthy and I just want to do it for preventative maintenance, then I would say maybe spring and fall, do a parasite cleanse. There you go. Yes?
And not to get too much into it, but what should a person be eating while cleansing?
That's a good question. What should a person be eating while cleansing? I would say what did God give us that's clean foods, right? Really is what you should be eating. I tell people the best things to eat for cleansing, period, is fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables, fruits and vegetables, fruits and vegetables. If you can get up to like 80% fruits and vegetables, you are on your way. The rest, quality protein. We need protein. We all know protein's important. Eat clean protein, not sushi. That was a joke, guys. Come on. So, eat quality, clean protein. Chicken, turkey, fish, beef, all those things are fine. And what you want to avoid is sugar and all processed grains and carbohydrates. Those are going to be the big ones that are going to be, feeding that infection. But yeah, basically the closer you can get to clean fruits and vegetables, adding in a little protein, that's your cleansing, healing diet right there. Did you have a question, daughter?
How do you know if you do a parasite cleanse and then nothing comes out, as you said, but then that worked out, you just have to have it do the hydrogen peroxide?
Right.
How do you know if you do something that they'll probably come out with the other guys we were talking about?
Yeah.
How do you know if you have a good always do a hydrogen peroxide?
It's a good question. So she asked, how do you know if somebody does a cleanse and nothing comes out? How do you know what to do with them next? Or do you give them hydrogen peroxide? I mentioned that example. I mean, what I would say is if that person's sick and they know they're sick and they're not well and they do a parasite cleanse and they don't get any results, then this is where you have to decide what's your next step. Do I do a different type of parasite cleanse? Do I try something stronger? Maybe parasites aren't my main issue. So there's not a clear-cut answer to that. It's just if the person's still not well, we haven't hit on what their main issue is yet, or we didn't necessarily do the right cleanse or a strong enough cleanse. So, hey, I'm real honest when I'm meeting with people. Hey, a lot of what we're doing is trial and error, right? I don't have some secret button to push that sees everything going on in your body. I pray for it. I'm like, Holy Spirit, download to me and tell me what is going on with every person. I've prayed that for 15 years, guys. I literally want the Lord to help us, okay? Because we need help. But, so I've prayed that prayer, but I don't have that discernment yet. So I'm in faith contending that I will. But until then, we don't have that magic button to know what's going on with people. So it's a lot of trial and error. The lab tests help. I can see if people have mold, they have Lyme disease. The labs are awesome. The blood work's awesome. But a lot of times it's just try this. Let me know what results you get. And sometimes we hit it out of the park. That person's life has changed forever. And sometimes they're like, that didn't help. Man, okay, what do we try next? So I always tell people, I will never give up on a person. They will give up on me before I will give up on them. So I'm not always going to hit it. But, I've done decent over the years. Yes?
Okay, regarding binders, how about food grade diatomaceous earth?
Yeah, I wouldn't consider that a binder. That's actually used in parasite cleansing. And that's actually in the children's parasite cleanse. So we combine a parasite syrup with the diatomaceous earth. And if you look at diatomaceous earth under a microscope, it looks like little shards of glass. So it actually kills and shreds parasites.
Okay, so if you have an issue with constipation, should you take a couple of weeks and do, colon type cleanses and then
Yes.
the parasite cleanse?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have issues with constipation, I would do the NB Pure. It used to be called Aerobic Life, but I think it's NB Pure now. It's a 10-day colon cleanse. And it's a fiber, it's aloe, and it's Mago 7. And just do some colon cleansing. Do a couple enemas. See if you can get a bunch of waste and stuff out of your bowels. And I would absolutely recommend doing that before doing a parasite cleanse. Because if you have a history of constipation or you're still constipated, you take a risk of not enjoying that parasite cleanse at all.
And what was it called? Nancy?
Nancy B. Bob, NB Pure. It's a 10-day. We have it out there with a sheet, and it's only 3 things, so it's really affordable too. Go ahead back there.
Do a lot of people do blood work first? So do you recommend testing first or just kind of go for it
I would just do the pulse test first. I would say go for it. I mentioned it earlier, I don't know if you were here, but eosinophils in blood work, but that's telling you the small blood, like microscopic bloodborne parasites. You may or may not have intestinal parasites. That's not going to tell you that. Or your eosinophils are fine on your blood work and you have intestinal parasites, but they're not showing up in your blood. So that's why it's like, you just need to try it. You just need to try it and see what happens. Because like I said, the worst thing that happens is nothing and you spent a couple $100 or whatever.
Is there, I guess I'm thinking about parasites and mold. Are the symptoms pretty similar or are they handled completely differently?
So there's a lot of crossover with symptoms. It's one of the most challenging things about what I do. I tell the story a lot of times about a woman who came in, she thought she was going insane, she was suicidal, she had kids, classic mold symptoms. I'm like, oh, she's got mold, we'll just test it and we'll work on the mold. Came back, no mold, highest level of lead I've ever seen.
Whoa.
And it was literally making her insane.
Oh.
So you can't necessarily always know what's going on with person, and there's a lot of crossover with symptoms. Cold flu symptoms and swollen lymph nodes and headaches and nausea and rashes, that can be 10 different things. So the reason I hit so hard on the parasites is people have had these issues and these symptoms for decades, and parasites has never been at the top of the list of how we treat it. And that's changing. It needs to be. So to answer your question, that's why I run labs. Some people have Lyme, some people have mold, some people have lead toxicity, some people have parasites. There's different types of parasites. Some people have, it's just candida yeast overgrowths. So it does help me to pinpoint what the person's dealing with. So, yes.
I brought that box of bell peppers, so you can help yourselves when you go home.
Oh, sweet.
Speaking of vegetables.
Thank you. All right. Yes, let's go online. Sure.
So someone, this is a specific question.
Cool.
They were diagnosed with GI junction cancer. Now,
GI cancer?
yeah.
Okay.
Now they're on immunotherapy. After
Right.
Going through chemo.
Right.
Is doing a parasite supplement / cleanse going to be safe?
So they have GI cancer. They're on an immunosuppressant drug. So let me just give the understanding first, because this is a great example, you guys. The person has parasites in their colon, which causes an abnormal immune response, triggering autoimmune conditions. So how does the medical system treat it? We're going to squash and shut down your immune system. Does that handle the parasite problem? No. So that issue is just going to continue to fester and get worse and worse and worse in there. So in that situation, because I've had that situation before, I would probably really hit heavy on cleansing the bowels, taking binders and getting used to taking binders regularly before you start the parasite cleanse. And then when you start the parasite cleanse, go very, very slow. That's it. Because if parasites is the problem, and you can get some of those parasites out, and you don't have the crazy immune response happening, then it's possible you can wean off of that medication. Because you can never get off of an immunosuppressant drug if you don't clear out of the body what's causing the immune problem, right? Which is why immunosuppressant drugs are not treatment for the disease. It's disease management, which is not bad. I mean, you have to function as a human being, so I totally get it. But we're not even attempting to deal with what the root problem is. So yeah, clean your bowels, get on some binders. There are things you can do for your immune system that are immunomodulators that regulate your immune system without overstimulating your immune system. So I'd probably put some people on some immunomodulators as well. But then they can go on a parasite cleanse and go very slow with it.
I heard that floaters can be parasites in the eye.
Yes. I believe eye floaters are parasites.
So which parasite cleanse is good for something like that?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, if you have eye floaters, then that means it's in the fluid systems of your body. It's not necessarily intestinal parasites. So now we're thinking the small guys. So I would be thinking liquids. I would be thinking, chlorine dioxide, herbal, liquid formulas, not necessarily capsules and powders. I'd be thinking liquids and things that's going to get into the bloodstream and kill parasites in your blood and your lymph. Yes.
Does SEIT have any effect on the parasites in the bowel?
That's a really good question. So the question is, does SEIT have any effect on parasites? And I would say, from my understanding, SEIT, the herbs in it are all anti-cancer. And I know they're very good lymphatic system herbs. But knowing what I know today about cancer and its connection with parasites, I would have to say the SEIT must have, and I don't know this for sure because I haven't researched those herbs in depth, but it must have some antiparasitic benefit. Otherwise, it wouldn't have helped so many people. So that's my answer without really knowing the answer.
Sorry, someone's asking if you could repeat the name of those herbs you just mentioned.
What? Oh, SEIT? Yeah, SEIT is a formula with 4 herbs that is slippery elm. Help me out, guys. Slippery elm, wood sorrel. What did you say? Burdock? Right? Burdock? One more. Come on, y'all know this.
No.
Okay, it's a 4 herb formula that was very popular for a woman who had breast cancer, healed her breast cancer. Native Americans gave her the formula. Another story, guys, of the world we live in today. Reversed her cancer, started giving it to her friends. She was a nurse. It was working so well, and she was giving it to so many people. She started opening clinics in Canada.
Wow.
Guess what happened?
Shut it down. They shut it down.
Government squashed it. Hey, this is our world, guys. There's no money in healthy people. You're worth a lot more sick than you are healthy.
Can't trademark herbs.
And you cannot trademark or patent what God created.
It's gotta change though.
It's changing. Let's do it. Got another one online?
Yeah. So kind of around pregnancy, infancy, what do
Sure.
you recommend for people that are pregnant / breastfeeding?
Yes. So what do you recommend if pregnant or breastfeeding? I have done parasite cleansing with women who are pregnant, and people flip out about that, but I'm like, if the woman needs help, I'm going to help her. Okay, so I'm going to err on the side of caution. I'd probably use Para 1 by Cellcore, which is Mimosa pudica, which is fine to take during pregnancy. There are a lot of other herbs, black walnut, wormwood, all the stronger ones, which you definitely would not recommend during pregnancy. I recommended, had that gal do the little bit of hydrogen peroxide and an enema, changed her life, right? Got all those parasites out. Pumpkin seeds are anti-parasite. So there's food, garlic, like, okay, well, I'm pregnant, like, hey, let's do some garlic and some pumpkin seeds, and like, let's use food. Let's use food to work on the parasites instead of the herbs. So there are some herbs you can do. Now with breastfeeding, this is what I tell women. If it's affecting your milk supply, if your milk supply is reducing, that's not good, okay? If it's affecting the taste of the milk where the baby doesn't want to nurse anymore because maybe there's some herbs in there and the baby's like, doesn't like the taste, that's a problem. But otherwise, a woman who is breastfeeding can parasite cleanse. Because to me, getting parasites out of the body is more important. And it's going to help the mom and the baby long term. I've never seen anything bad happen with a woman who is breastfeeding taking herbs. I'm absolutely going to use more caution if the woman is pregnant, especially in the first trimester. And in fact, I don't have pregnant women do parasite cleansing unless they're like, I'm desperate, help me, tell me what I can take that is safe during pregnancy, I'll do that. But for the most part, yeah, it's not recommended. But breastfeeding, I think like, I mean, you can pick what, like year, definitely, like you're safe. If you've been breastfeeding a year, like you're good. But even women who have been just breastfeeding a couple of months, like not right out of the gate, right? But if they're like 3 months into breastfeeding and man, they got these serious issues and they know a parasite cleanse will help them, just make sure it doesn't affect the milk supply or the taste of the milk. That's what I've recommended for years and that's worked great. So, are there more online?
A lot more.
Well, what time is it? Okay, I'll go 20 more minutes, guys. Again, if you gotta go, go ahead, but I'll go till 8 o'clock. What's that? Oh, you have a question? Go ahead.
Should you find that you do a parasite cleanse, taking the ivermectin regularly or just use ivermectin on its own?
Okay, so the question is, could you do a parasite cleanse with ivermectin or do ivermectin on its own? I would do both because ivermectin is only gonna work against specific types of parasites and not all. So there's no reason you can't do both. And, you know, ivermectin's been around for decades, guys. It's a pharmaceutical drug, but it's, you know, for the most part, it's not as dangerous as some other pharmaceutical drugs. So if people are taking it short term, I think that's fine. I did have a woman come in who had been taking ivermectin every day for 6 months, and I ran her blood work, and I'm like, you need to take a break. Her liver enzymes were through the roof. So again, the pharmaceutical drugs, guys, they can work, but they're gonna have side effects and you gotta know what you're doing and you gotta take breaks. So I'm like, hey, take a break for at least a month and let's try to like take that pressure off your liver because it was messing up her liver. So, online?
Yep. There's a lot of different brands for the cleansers.
Yes.
Including a couple on your website, and then people have heard of Dr. Halda Clark's as
Right.
well. Does it matter which one you choose?
Absolutely. Yeah, they asked if the brand matters. 100%. 100% it matters. I'll give you an example. One of my favorite herbs on the planet is Lomatium dissectum, which is LDM 100. There's tons of formulas out there for this herb. It grows in the Pacific Northwest. The gal I get it from, Barlow Herbs, her dad learned how to cure it properly so that it's most effective. And if you don't cure it properly, it doesn't work. So there's so many people out there taking this herb because they heard all these great things about it and they're like, didn't really do anything for me. But I give them this one because they're curing it and preparing it properly, and it is unbelievable for viral issues, Lyme disease, all kinds of different stuff. So I definitely think quality matters. I really trust everything Barlow. I would also trust Dr. Hulda Clark because she was a pioneer in the 1980s. And she wrote books telling people that, hey, you have parasites and your cancer is parasites. She wrote books on this 50 years ago and they thought she was a crazy lady. She wasn't crazy. She was helping people. So if you look on my website, you know, I've been researching stuff for 15 years. I know there's a lot of stuff on there. I would like to be able to say that if it's on our website, it's good quality. Cellcore has really revolutionized parasite cleansing, so all the Cellcore stuff's great. Nutramedics is my newest favorite company ever because all their herbs are from South America. They're from the Amazon, and oh my gosh, do they work. I could tell you stories. So all the Nutramedics, all the Cellcore, Dr. Clark, because they've been around forever, anything Barlow. Those are probably the main brands I use. I would not just go buy XYZ formula on Amazon. You may or may not be aware, but there's people selling stuff on Amazon and it's total snake oil. Like it's not even what they say it is. Like there's all kinds of scams. You know, this industry is huge and it's growing. So there's going to be people out there doing evil things. So be cautious. Another one online.
Can internal decay in the teeth be a source of parasites in the bloodstream?
Can internal decay in the teeth be parasites? I would say, I'll tell you what to do for it. I would say most likely it's a bacterial issue with the mouth, not parasites. I just had this conversation with a guy today who was having issues with his mouth ulcers, gum receding, and I was like, here's what you do. So I have a periodontal protocol, which I have people take water and put baking soda in it and use it as a mouth rinse. You can also take water with hydrogen peroxide and use that as a mouth rinse. So baking soda and hydrogen peroxide in mouth rinses. But here's the kicker, man. This is the coolest thing ever. Get ozonated oil. So we have pure O3 ozonated oil. We have an ozonated olive oil. Go to the drugstore or hop on Amazon, get dental picks. Do you know what those little dental picks are? You can use them in between your gum line. And you take the ozonated olive oil, put a little bit on the lid or something. You take those dental picks and you get the ozonated oil on that and you stick it in between your gums. Oh my gosh, just get ready. So it's gonna clear all that bacteria out of the gums and out of your mouth. If you haven't done something like that before, you probably will have lots of blood. I'm sorry. Your mouth will probably be throbbing and you will realize how infected your mouth and your gums were and you never knew it. You put oxygen in between your gums. Yeah, so now that's something I do regularly now. And I tell you what, even if I haven't done it in a month and I do it, my gums bleed.
So the oxygenated oil or?
Ozonated olive oil, Pure O3 is the company. Get the dental picks, slather it in the oil, put it between all of your gums. But to answer the question, I believe that's probably a bacterial issue, and that would be how you solve it. Yes?
So the three main herbs, so the walnut, wormwood, and cloves, does that target both the micro and the worm?
It does.
Okay.
It does.
I was also wondering if you needed to give your body a break from that.
You do.
Okay.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, it's good to take a break. Yeah, and I've had people do 5 days on, 2 days off before, but I've even had people parasite cleanse every day for 3 straight months. There's no real negatives to it.
Yeah.
It's just that it's good to take people are naturally going to take breaks. They're going on vacation. They had this happen. They had that happen. So it's always good to give the body rest. It's also good to cycle different things. Okay, because parasites are smart and they can hide and they can get resistant to things or whatever. And again, I don't necessarily know how all that works, but I do notice that I'll have people on a protocol for a while and they're like, man, I'm not really noticing anything anymore. And I'll switch up the protocol and all of a sudden we got more activity. So I definitely think it's good to switch things up once in a while as well. Yes?
How much time are you thinking like on each one?
Oh, like on each one, it's really, there's not a good answer to that. Yeah, on intestinal, well, yeah, I can't give a good answer. Normally I have people, I do something called pulsing, okay? I do this more when people are ill and they're having negative reactions because they can't handle too much. So I might have them do 4 days on, 3 days off, or 5 days on, 2 days off, or something like that. I had a gal who had a serious viral issue, and I was like, okay, just do 5 days on, 2 days off. Oh my gosh, the first day, like, hammered her. So we were doing 1 day a week. And then when she got stronger, we went to 2 days a week. Then we went to 3 days a week. So, her body's getting better, her body's getting stronger because she can handle it. So that's called pulsing, where you can do that. That's also why we have the parasite cleanses, because they're a set number of days. And then, right, you could take a break. So, yeah. Online?
Can parasites cause weight gain and inflammation?
Can parasites cause weight gain and inflammation? 100%. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, parasites can cause abnormally heavy weight, and it can cause people to be thin and not gain any weight. It can go both ways. So, yeah.
Which ones Which parasites did you say were most related to cognitive issues?
Which parasites? I would say more so there's intestinal parasites, and then there's different terms for it, but let's just say protozoan parasites. Those are the small ones. Yeah, what's affecting the brain is usually going to be protozoan, the smaller parasites. But a lot of times affecting the brain is also fungus and mold. Yeah. So if you look into, there's actually a clinic down in Florida that treats a lot of people with neurological conditions, MS, Alzheimer's, a lot of serious brain conditions. He actually takes pictures of their brain and shows the white spots in their brain where the mold has been taking over their brain.
Wow.
He shows it to them on the screen. Yeah, it's scary. So I'd say fungus and mold are probably the biggest reason people have Alzheimer's, dementia, all those neurological conditions, more so than parasites. I did mention MS, which there's a big group of doctors and a big body of research now saying MS is parasites in the brain.